You're asking me what the government should do. And what I'm saying is money decomposed into currency and capital. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. Bitcoin is emerging as the world's reserve capital. Gold used to be the world's reserve capital network. Gold became ineffective in the 20th century. Bitcoin is becoming the digital gold of the 21st century. You understand gold, and you understand digital gold. If you want the US to remain the world's greatest power, the economic leader, then your agenda ought to be economic and technical leadership. That means create a regulated stable coin, make it possible for a US bank or a US company to issue a dollar-backed stable coin like Tether, like Circle. Create a regulatory environment, a digital assets framework, if you will, where Tether can relocate to the US, and then expand the stablecoin market from $150 billion to $10 trillion, because there's $900 trillion of wealth in the world. We could go back to the Croesus chart. About 450 trillion of it is for assets held for use, for their use case, and the other 450 trillion is store of value. But you can see it's pretty easy to get to 10 trillion. Are you suggesting that's too much or too little?
No, I'm just trying to track whether that number is tied to something that I should already be aware of, or if you're just giving an example.
It's 1% of the global economy, right? 1% of the global economy wants to be a medium of exchange in the dollar. Yeah. We can stipulate it's my opinion, if you like. You asked me what advice I'd give the administration, though, so I'm giving you my advice, which is you want the US dollar to be the world's reserve currency, and you want the US to own the world's reserve capital network. For the US dollar to be the world's reserve digital currency, if you want to be the world's reserve currency and you want to cement your control for the next 100 years, then you want the US dollar to move at the speed of light on billions and billions of devices. Okay, how do you do it? You need a stable coin backed by US dollar equivalents. Who should issue it? A company in the US. Either a bank or a public company like Circle, right? And how do you ensure it's good for the dollar? Well, you just make sure that it's pegged 1-for-1 to US dollar equivalents. Now let's go to Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't medium exchange. It isn't the currency. It's capital. It's digital gold. What the government ought to do is sell their gold. They have $600 billion of gold. They ought to just sell it and buy Bitcoin with it. And you could buy 20 or 25% of the Bitcoin network with the proceeds from selling the gold. The goal ought to be for the US just to buy 4 or 5 million Bitcoin. After you do that, you've demonetized the gold network. So the gold network is the 19th century world reserve capital network. You might as well just sell it all. The people that will own it will be the enemies of the United States. And the gold network will go from being worth $20 trillion to being worth $4 trillion or $3 trillion. You'll just drive it into the ground. Gold will go to $200-300 an ounce. And anybody holding gold as a reserve asset is bankrupted or has a worthless rock, just a shiny, heavy rock. And you're buying Bitcoin in the swap, and then Bitcoin goes to hundreds of trillions of dollars a coin, and you end up with $50 trillion to $100 trillion of capital. And then what happens in the US? The US becomes the economic leader of the world for the next 100 years. We're the richest country in the world. We negate the entire debt. If you generate a $50 trillion capital gain with Bitcoin, you offset the existing national debt and you become a net creditor nation. And the dollar permeates everywhere. Okay, what's going to pay for this, Tom? Well, first of all, everybody with CNY or rubles or any African currency, any South American currency, even the euro, they're probably just going to trade all their currency for the US dollars, for the digital currency of the US. Second, Anybody with capital assets outside the US that can't get access to the dollar to capitalize their company, they're going to use the stable coins to capitalize their entity. So you're going to have capital flows from currency, and you're going to have a lot of other capital flows. There's a lot of people in the world, in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Argentina. They would sell their real estate, they would sell their equity, they would sell their currency, they would sell their bonds just to buy the US dollar. I mean, that's been proven in Argentina, that's been proven in Turkey, that's proven in Lebanon. So you'll have a lot of currency, a lot of money just flow into the US dollar via the stable coin. And by the way, an anecdote is, in Europe, if Europeans are given a choice between the digital euro and the digital dollar, they 99% of the time choose the dollar. That means people in France and Germany and Italy and Greece want the dollar. Now, if I go to China and I give them a choice between the digital CNY and the digital dollar, the vast majority of the money chooses the dollar. That's why it's illegal. That's why the Chinese have a law making it illegal for you to trade crypto, because everybody wants it so bad, they would all buy it. So we're talking about economic physics now, right? Capital flow, money, water flows downhill and money flows to its most secure, best home. So on the capital side, with regard to Bitcoin, what would happen is, everybody in Africa, South America, Asia, they would all dump their physical assets and their low quality bonds, currencies, real estate, equity, and they would buy Bitcoin.
You mentioned that earlier. Do you think that as quantum computing rises up, because recently Google made the Willow announcement that it's able to run computation so much faster, will Bitcoin simply adopt a new security protocol? What will that look like?
Google would sell a computer that destroys its own network, which is kind of ironic to me, right? Like, that's also the acid test, right? If you're going to crack the cryptography, you would actually crack the networks that Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft run, and then you would crack every single government network and every banking network. And if you could crack all those networks, you wouldn't need to steal the Bitcoin. 99.9% of the stuff in the world isn't in the Bitcoin network. So if you hype it, and I don't think Google is selling such a device, right? I don't know what'll happen, but the entire thing is a little bit of a parody to me. If we just...
Because you never think it's going to happen, or because Bitcoin is nimble enough that when something like that happens, they'd be able to adopt a new security protocol?
What I'm saying is all the existing news is just climatology alarmism, where someone is saying, I invented a hyper powerful computer, and then it's being used by an entrepreneur to market their new quantum token. Like, the number one use of it, well, that's why we're talking about it, right? The number one use of this is to actually market a yo-yo token that someone has that has a quantum resistant algorithm, and they're hoping you think that the quantum threat is a threat. I'm just going to indulge the fantasy for a second. Let's say sometime in the next 30 or 40 years, or whenever it happens, someone comes up with a powerful computer, which we will call a quantum computer, which actually does something useful. And the useful thing is it cracks cryptography. Then I would acknowledge it's a problem for the human race. It's a problem for every government, every company, every individual. Because if I really can crack cryptography, that means everything that's digital in your life is now at risk. That means I can launch, nuclear weapons. That means I can take over the government. That means I can have the Interpol kick your door in and shoot you with a fake arrest warrant, right? So the point really is all of civilization breaks down into chaos if Dr. Evil gets the hypothetical quantum computer that really does work. Let's imagine that threat. What's my response? The response is obvious, which is every computer scientist on the planet has a vested interest in upgrading the cryptography that we use to secure our networks and our systems. we will do that. If the quantum computer, the quantum chip that Google offered actually threatened cryptography, Google's own engineers would be releasing a set of upgrades to their own encryption, and they'd be huddled with Microsoft engineers right now, because Google and Microsoft would be the two biggest losers. And if they didn't, Zuckerberg would be doing it at Meta. So ultimately, it's not a Bitcoin specific thing. It's a human race specific thing. And let's just reframe it as, what happens if we come up with a computer that can break our current SHA-256, techniques, or our current cryptography? And the answer is, we're going to upgrade it. We'll upgrade the software. Bitcoin is at its core, it's a protocol, like English, like math. If I come up with a way to hack your phone and send a message from you to the government saying you're going to topple the government, I have corrupted your communication technique, but you're not going to abandon English, are you? Right? And if I come up with a protocol to basically put false numbers into your database, that doesn't mean you're going to abandon base 10 math. I mean, Bitcoin is a bunch of honest people, smart money. They all decided that they were going to store their money in a bank in cyberspace that they trust. The bank is getting upgraded all the time. The software is upgraded every year. The hardware is upgraded every year. And so the implementation of the protocol will change over time. And if there is a quantum threat, we will react to the quantum threat, just like if you were to go to the Microsoft shareholder meeting and said, hey, I heard Google just released the quantum chip and it looks like it's going to crack your cryptography, and therefore should I sell my Microsoft stock and buy quantum yo-yo stock? I bet you Satya Nadella would say, no, don't buy quantum yo-yo stock, because it's an overdone fear, and quantum yo-yo doesn't actually have the support of every company on earth, and doesn't have a multi-trillion dollar market cap, and it doesn't have all of our engineers, and everybody on earth hasn't decided to standardize their office products on quantum yo-yo whatever stock. They're using Microsoft. Don't worry, we're adults. If it does become a threat in the future, we'll upgrade our software to deal with the threat when it happens. For now, the reason people buy Bitcoin is it's better monetary protocol. And the reason that they use Google is it's a better search engine. And the reason they use Microsoft is it's a better enterprise software suite. All three of them have to deal with this uncertain thing we call the future. And I think that they'll probably figure it out. If they don't figure it out, right, then they'll be replaced with something better. But I put my money on Bitcoin first, because the protocols, whether it's the metric system or the English language or base 10 math or Bitcoin, those protocols, they're the most durable thing in the human race, and they will outlast the companies and the countries.